The war had raged for 3 cycles, painting the stars red with the blood of 2 species who had never bothered to understand each other. The Velkari Empire, with their crystalline ships and telepathic unity, had swept across human colonies like a cosmic storm. Humanity, stubborn and fractured as always, fought back with a ferocity that surprised even themselves. Harry Chen had never wanted to be a soldier. Before the war, he'd been a medic on a frontier colony, healing farmers and miners who thought themselves far from the concerns of empires. But the Velkari came, and with them they brought fire. Now he crouched in the ruins of Outpost 7, his medical bag clutched to his chest, listening to the screams of dying humans and the chittering shriek of wounded Velkari alike. The battle had moved on, leaving him in a graveyard of metal and flesh. His leg throbbed where shrapnel had torn through his armor, but he pushed the pain aside. A sound caught his attention. Not the aggressive war cry of a Velkari warrior, but something smaller, weaker, a child's whimper. Harry limped toward the sound, his pistol ready, but lowered. Through the smoke he found her, a small Velkari no bigger than a human 10-year-old, though her species aged differently. Her carapace was still soft, showing her youth, and it had been cracked open by an explosion. Bioluminescent blood pooled beneath her, pulsing with fading light. Her forearms clutched at the wound, and her large compound eyes fixed on him with unmistakable terror. For a moment, Harry's finger tightened on the trigger. This was the enemy. This creature's people had killed his friends, destroyed his home, murdered billions of humans across a dozen worlds. But then she whimpered again, and Harry saw past the alien features to something universal. A child, dying and afraid. He holstered his weapon and knelt beside her. She tried to scramble away, but her injuries made movement impossible. Harry opened his medical bag, his hands moving with practiced efficiency. The Velkari physiology was different, but trauma was trauma. He could see the arterial equivalent pumping her life away. He had minutes at best. "Easy," he murmured, though she couldn't understand his words. "I've got you." She struggled as he applied pressure to the wound, her 3-fingered hands batting weakly at his arms. Harry absorbed the blows, focusing on stopping the bleeding. He'd studied enough captured Velkari physiology reports to know the basics. He applied a universal coagulant, expensive stuff that worked on most carbon-based life, and watched it foam and seal. The young Velkari's movements grew weaker, but her eyes never left his face. Harry suspected she was broadcasting telepathically, calling for help. He hoped someone was listening. He wrapped compression bandages around her small torso, working carefully around her fractured carapace. She was so light in his arms, so fragile. "You're going to be okay," he whispered, cradling her against his chest. She'd stopped fighting him. Whether from exhaustion or because she sensed his intent, he didn't know. That's when the temperature dropped. Harry looked up and felt his blood turn to ice. Through the smoke and debris, a figure emerged that made his survival instincts scream. She was massive, easily 9 feet tall, her carapace a deep midnight blue that seemed to absorb light. 4 arms, each capable of tearing a man in half, hung at her sides, but it was her crown that marked her status, a natural growth of crystalline spikes that only Velkari royalty possessed. Behind her, a dozen Velkari warriors materialized from the shadows, their weapons trained on Harry's head. Queen Sharaketh had carved her way through 3 human battalions that morning. She'd personally executed the general who'd bombed her colony world. Her telepathic scream had shattered the minds of countless human soldiers. She was death incarnate, and every human soldier had been briefed. If you see the queen, you run, but Harry couldn't run. The wounded child in his arms would die if he moved her too quickly. The queen froze, her compound eyes fixed on the impossible scene before her. A human holding her daughter, her youngest, her precious Akeem, who should have been safe in the rear guard, far from the fighting. But Akeem had been curious, had slipped away to see the battle, and now she lay broken in the arms of humanity's most hated enemy. Sharaketh's warriors tensed, waiting for the order to fire. The human should be dead already, but something stayed her hand. The human wasn't running, wasn't using Akeem as a shield. He was protecting her. Harry met the queen's eyes, those vast, multifaceted orbs that held depths he couldn't begin to fathom. Slowly, carefully, he lifted the child toward her. His voice was steady despite the terror coursing through him. "She's stabilized, but she needs a medical facility. The chest wound will hold for maybe an hour if she stays calm. The queen stood motionless, her mind reeling. The human's hands were covered in Akeem's blood. He'd used his supplies, precious human medical supplies, on a Velkari. On her child. She could sense Akeem's weak telepathic signal now, and mixed with the pain and fear was something else. Gratitude, trust. Akeem had been dying, and this human had saved her. One of the warriors chittered urgently, his weapon trained on Harry's head. The queen raised one hand, signaling him to wait. She stepped forward, each movement deliberate, closing the distance between herself and the human. Harry didn't flinch, though every nerve in his body screamed at him to run. He kept his arms extended, offering the wounded child. "Take her," Harry said softly. "Please." Queen Sharaketh reached out with her massive hands and gently lifted Akeem from the human's arms. The child curled against her mother's chest, and the queen's telepathic embrace washed over her daughter, soothing and protecting. She examined the human's work, crude but effective. He'd saved Akeem's life. For the first time in 3 cycles of war, Queen Sharaketh looked at a human and didn't see a monster. Why? The word emerged in rough galactic standard, a language both species knew. Harry's legs finally gave out and he sank to the ground, exhausted. He looked up at the towering alien queen and gave a tired smile. She's just a kid. Doesn't matter which side she's on. The warriors' weapons hummed, charging for execution. But Sharaketh raised her hand again, stopping them. She looked at this strange human who defied everything she thought she knew about his species. Humans were supposed to be savage, unthinking, driven only by violence. But this one had chosen mercy when vengeance would have been easier. She turned to leave, then paused. Without looking back, she spoke one word in his language, her pronunciation perfect through telepathic translation. "Go." Harry didn't need to be told twice. He limped into the ruins as the Velkari warriors parted before him, their weapons lowering in confusion. Behind him, he heard the Queen's telepathic command ripple through her forces, and the attack on Outpost 7 ceased. The war would continue for another 2 cycles before peace talks began. But historians would later mark this moment, when a human medic refused to let an alien child die, and a queen learned that humans could choose compassion over hatred, as the turning point. And in the decades that followed, when Queen Sharaketh's daughter Akeem became ambassador to Earth, she would always remember the human who held her when she was dying, who refused to let go until her mother came, the human who taught 2 species that maybe, just maybe, they weren't so different after all.